All right, honey. So is our marriage like a business?
Oh, yes, it runs so smooth, just like our business. Doesn't
Now,
miss a beat.
that wasn't my question. I wasn't asking if our marriage was running as well as our business. I was just asking if our marriage is like a business.
Yes, in certain aspects, I'd say it's like a business.
You wouldn't be you would not guess how much we've prepared for this introduction, folks. So anyways, good answer, honey. Yes, our marriage is very much like a business. And for those of you listening, thinking, oh my gosh, how can you talk about your marriage like a business? Well, stay with us, right? Because number one, what's common in our marriage and our business is one thing is our financial statements.
Right,
We
we have
all
to
have
know.
one. We have to have one.
We
There's
have to know
income
where we're
coming.
at financially.
Yeah, we have to have our income coming in. We know what money's going out, what it's being paid to, and hopefully we got money left over, right?
Right.
So we can save and invest and all those things, just like a business. So if we just look at that one thing aspect of our marriage, it's very much like running a business. And we have to make decisions around that.
Yeah, it's a big piece of it. Definitely.
And it goes more than that, right? It's all the things, what do we dream about in the future? What are the things we're planning for as far as vacation?
And what does that look like?
Where do we want to live? You know, when we have disagreements of what we want to do with our—
Where do you want to spend the money?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That kind of stuff. There's all those things that we have to do. And it's very much like running a business. And so it's kind of interesting how, you know, as business owners, we're going to do everything we can to make our business as profitable as possible, as efficient as possible, and make sure our team's doing well, our customers are doing well. We make sure we take care of other people, right? And so all the things that we would do to try and make our business as successful as possible, if we took those same principles and applied it into our marriage, where do you think we'd be?
Oh, we'd be a lot better, a lot further ahead.
Yeah. Like one thing that always comes up of all the successful couples that we've talked to, you know, either on our podcast or just friends or whatever, there's always that common word that comes as being intentional.
Yeah, things just don't happen.
Exactly.
I like to think that they do, but it doesn't.
Yeah, we think just because we get married, we found our soulmate, that everything's going to be hunky-dory. We, you know, have that story ending in...
Yeah, it's so simple. There's an easy button.
Yeah. It doesn't happen that way, huh?
No.
Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about today is the business of marriage. And while it may sound technical, boring, kind of almost sterile, stay with us because we'll show you how much of a happier, healthier, and more financially beneficial relationship that you will have as husband and wife, and how you can use those same principles to apply both in business and marriage and be successful.
And it might be a little bit different than how you think it's going to be.
Yeah. So let's give this a try, right, honey? All right. Let's get going. Welcome to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. We're your hosts, Robert and Kaylee Fukui. I know we're supposed to say we created this podcast for you, but we really created this for us. Because one of the power struggles we witnessed growing up and now dealing with in the present is balancing the needs of the business with priorities of marriage. Does this sound familiar?
As children of entrepreneurs, we're often on the receiving end of that struggle. Parents worked so hard to provide that they did not have time for us. We realized it wasn't their fault. They did only what they knew. But not wanting to repeat the past, we've been intentional about building a business that we run as opposed to it running us.
Every day we fight to keep the priorities the priority: faith, family, and finance, or the business. Some think it's impossible, but we say it's possible. You just need to challenge the false belief that a successful business only comes at the sacrifice of your family. It doesn't have to happen that way, and we know we're not the only couple to think this way and achieve it.
If you listen to some of our past episodes and tune in for future ones, you will hear from some amazing marriage experts and entrepreneur couples that have been able to build a thriving marriage and prosperous business at the same time.
So that's why we created this podcast, to be in the front row and hear from others that have gone before us. And from time to time, we'll share what has worked for us as well. But we know there's more to learn and want to take you along for the ride with us. We may never get it perfect, but with intention, we can all build a thriving marriage and prosperous business. So thank you for listening. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's power up your marriage and business. All right, so let's get to it, honey. Our business is like a marriage, right?
Yes,
or no,
it is.
Our marriage is like the business. Sorry, I messed up. Take two. Our marriage is like a business.
Yes, honey, you're correct.
And you know me, I love talking about marketing, finances, vision, planning,
Strategies,
all that kind of
problem
stuff.
solving.
Yeah. And imagine if I would do that as well in business as at home.
Oh, I would love that, honey.
And you're going to say that. So,
Yes, please sign me up.
so yes, I'll admit that I'm probably not as good at home with some of those things, implementing some of those things as I do in our business. Actually, I'm actually better at it for other people's business. As business consultants, that's what we do, right? We help their business become better, help their marriage become better. And I think I'm better at strategic planning and all that stuff for other people's business than our own.
Why is that? That's a whole nother episode.
I think if
That's so
every
true.
consultant and every business owner really is honest, they'll say the same thing.
Right.
We're better giving advice to other people. One is, I think we see things more clearly because, well, when from the outside looking in, you can see everything in a whole. Versus when it's about yourself or your own business, we have blind spots.
Yeah, and we're like too close to it.
Yeah, too close. Exactly.
We don't have fresh eyes for it.
Mm-hmm. So of course we miss stuff.
Right.
So there you go. Be honest. So, but the great thing, because we're married and our listeners are married, then guess what?
What?
We each have our built-in consultants. We're married to a consultant. We're married to good counsel and people that know us really well, know our strengths, and also know our weaknesses.
Well, and I think people that have your back too, that want nothing but the best for you and for us,
Exactly.
There's no I. What did somebody say? 1 + 1 = us? Somebody was saying that the other day on our podcast.
Yeah, I think because I said 1 + 1 = 3, and then they said, 1 + 1 = us.
Yes.
So yeah, that was cute. So yeah, we don't see our own blind spots. Therefore, a lot of times we're not as good at dealing with our own stuff as we are at helping other people. But even just taking it down a little notch, we're, as business owners, we're always looking for ways to improve our business. But we're always looking for a heads up or a leg up. And we'll even sometimes hire consultants or coaches to come in and take a look. And we are, business planning, looking at our financials, kind of seeing what we can do differently, how to improve our marketing, our communication. How do we improve the culture in the organization, right? All those things. How do we incentivize people to do better, and how do we reward success? And we set milestones, and to be able to try and accomplish all that, we have meetings, we have planning meetings, we have meetings on a yearly basis, the big meeting, and then we have our quarterly meetings, and then we have monthly meetings, and sometimes weekly meetings. And for some businesses, they even do daily, quick checkups.
Yeah, I know couples that do that too.
Yeah. And so imagine if we did all those things in our marriage. And it sounds, again, before we dive into it, it might sound a little sterile and so business-like, but let's break it down a little bit and see how we can really do it, bring those principles and concepts into our marriage and have our marriage be stronger for it.
Yeah, can we add a little color to it, please?
Don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry. So let's start with the number one word we hear all the time, which is intentional.
And that's your word of the year.
And it is my word of the year, intentional. So if you want to reach any kind of goal, whether it's business related or personal related, one, you got to name the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to make $1 million. But you also have to develop a plan of action and actually go do it, right?
Right.
So if we want our marriage to be successful, and there's areas in every marriage that can improve,
mm-hmm.
then we got to figure out, okay, what are the areas that need improvement, and then put a plan of action into it, and then go do it.
Yeah, make it measurable.
Right? If we're always in disagreement, then one goal would be just how do we come to agreement better, which might mean you're going to need to get help. Right.
And it's okay to get help, you guys. I mean, a lot of coaches have coaches. And
yeah, coaches have coaches.
Yes.
Good coaches have coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of executives, high-level CEOs of, Fortune 500 companies, they have coaches. Yeah, because they just need people to talk to and confide into.
And good counsel and wisdom. And...
yeah. So being intentional and, if conflict number one is, if you want to do better at that, then you're probably going to need help. Because if you've been married significant amount of years, it's not getting better, then let's not keep trying to do the same thing over and over again. Let's go get help.
Yeah, because obviously what you're doing isn't working and you haven't been able to figure it out. So
Yeah. So being intentional, if you really want your marriage to succeed, and you really got to be intentional about doing it, you got to actually do something, which means you're going to have to do something different.
take some action. Yeah, do some work.
So, and then one of the things to be intentional about is, this is a common gap we see in most marriages, is lack of real vision.
Oh, yeah, we hear this all the time. We see it
And
constantly.
part of the thing, what's challenging for couples to set a clear vision is because, what does that look like? I guess you need to have modeled what a vision looks like in order for you to be able to establish a vision.
Well, I think sometimes we marry opposite and we get the planner and then someone that's not a planner, and then they get frustrated because one has a hard time buying into the idea of where the other one wants to possibly go because they don't see a vision or a plan ahead of them.
Mhm.
And so they're kind of like, oh, I don't know about this.
Yeah,
But once
so-
we help them come up with a vision or a plan and they can see it, they're like, oh, I'm totally on board. That's fine. That's great with me.
yeah. So vision is, as the word implies, is what do you see? So it's not coming up with some goals and plans of action per se, but it's like, what is it that you see?
Where are you
best,
going?
What does your best life look like, right, for the future? And incorporate, obviously, your family life, your home, where you're going to live, financially, how are you doing? Are you just going on vacation? Are you just doing cruises the whole rest of your life when you get into that retirement age? Or are you still working? Like, according to my wife, I'm never going to retire like the way people talk about retirement. I'm going to be working until...
I say you can work less hours, I suggest, because you love to be learning and helping people and growing, and you get a lot of fulfillment out of that. I don't see you just sitting home watching TV all day long and playing golf every day.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be necessarily even just working like paid consulting work. I mean, I do volunteer work even now. You can volunteer with some of these nonprofits, or like in my case, helping with some business incubators in at-risk communities. So these up-and-coming business owners wouldn't be able to afford our rates, but getting a discount or some kind of scholarship for some of these programs, and then I volunteer some of my time to help them. And so that's part of it too. It's like, I'll be consulting in some form or fashion in the future. Some of it paid, some of it not paid. But that's still going to be part of my life because, yeah, you're right. I enjoy it. I love it. I love helping people, and I love helping their business grow, period.
Well, too, I've seen so many times people retire and then they don't last very long. So,
Mhm. So there's certainly going to be, and I think we're visioning living on the water somewhere. Probably not on the beach. We both don't really want to live on the beach, but lakes are cool.
yes.
So we've been talking about that and looking at things, right? Looking at properties on the lake. And then, now I understand the value of having a pontoon. I used to make fun of people with a pontoon, and now I'm like,
Well, I want
oh,
a ski
okay.
boat too.
Now I get the pontoon thing. So,
Putts around.
so that's from the living aspect, is that. And then, but from more the professional development or personal development is always consulting in some form or fashion, probably being more active in the church that we're connected to. And of course, travel, because we both love to travel.
Yes, we do.
So there's all those different places we're going to travel. So we also talk about, are we going to have a second home somewhere? Or is it just better to have our primary residence, and then we just, go rent a place for a couple months at a time if we want to stay in, whether it's Hawaii or Europe or someplace, but we want to stay longer than just a couple weeks, that maybe we find a place to rent for 2-3 months and stay there.
Yeah, because we plan on retiring somewhere where we get a big return on our money. And so we can spend that on retirement or traveling or whatever we want to do.
Yeah. And even in the midst of doing all that, we can still do some work because our work is pretty virtual.
Well, and that just frees us up financially to do a lot more things if we're living in a place that's not as expensive.
Yeah.
But that's a plan. We can't just we're going to do that tomorrow.
So that's the vision. And then now the planning part comes into, okay, if we really want to live on a lake, I don't want to wait till 65 or 70 to do that. So we start looking around, right? Like we're currently looking around. I'm on Zillow on the weekends, looking at different places that have a nice lake and some homes and stuff that, are, I guess any place out of Southern California is going to be dirt cheap, right? So pretty much anywhere. Once we move out of California, we can afford anything pretty much, right? So, and then we've been looking at our financial picture and our assets and kind of shifting some of it into different types of investment vehicles, right? And so there's things that we're putting into place to prepare for some of that long-term vision. But even with those long-term visions, talking about how can you live out some of those things now? Because one of the things we don't want you to do is you plan out this great life in the future, and then all you're doing is working to get to that point. And then who knows what your health's going to be like, or your ideas might even change.
Your spouse's health.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen to your family life.
Yeah.
So many things can happen. We don't know how long we have. So
as we're kind of putting some of those plans in place for the future vision, how can you live out some of that even right now?
And it doesn't have to be anything super expensive. It could be some stuff on your bucket list that you've always wanted to do. I've done plenty of stuff on my list that weren't expensive.
Yeah. And like say, even the volunteer work with, entrepreneurs and at-risk communities, and I'm doing it now. So I don't have to wait till retirement to do that. I can do some of that now. I may not be able to do as much of it now as I'm thinking I can do or will do in the future, in 10 years, 15 years from now, but I can do some of that now. We certainly travel. And
we love to travel to our clients.
Yeah, because we're going up to Alaska here in a couple months. So that's going to be fun to visit one of our clients. And so looking at, when you're talking the vision about travel and business at the same time, this is a case where we get to travel and do business at the same time.
Yeah.
Right?
So you guys listening, anybody from Europe? Oh my gosh, we would love to come and speak.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And do a teaching for you guys and bring our book and talk about that.
Exactly, because we've got a number of listeners in most parts of Europe. Right?
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun?
Bulgaria is one. We have great friends here in Pasadena from Bulgaria, and they go back and forth quite a bit. But I know we've got listeners in Bulgaria,
Switzerland,
Romania,
don't we?
Switzerland, yep, the Norwegian type countries, those Nordic countries up there, Belgium, Germany, Italy.
Who knows all the places?
Anyways, all that to say is we have, wherever you're listening from, yes, we'd love an invitation. So anyways, because we're up for travel. And so, yeah, again, putting some of those things in place now, and even travel, it doesn't have to be expensive. Like we just do weekenders or even just locally.
Oh my gosh, on our book tour, we weren't planning this, but we ended up buying an annual pass for the parks. And it more than paid itself. We still have it. We can still use it. And I think we have it till August. So
National Park, $80 for the year. So
yeah,
from then on, it's pretty much free for the whole year. So yeah, that's an example of doing something on the cheap, which is great. I mean, the Grand Canyon, what was that? Zion National Park.
Saw the arches.
Bryce Canyon.
Yes.
And we were there in
Tetons.
The Grand Tetons, Grand Tetons, Yosemite.
That was all in our book tour, and that was planned.
Anyways, all to say is, there's a lot of things you can do to travel and do it on the cheap. Now, some of those things you might have to do some overnighters and all that, but even locally, we can do things. Like even, I just wrote a little article for our newsletter, and just some tips of things you can do for the cheap or free. And the first place to start of things to do to have fun is just Google things to do near me.
Oh, I've done that. And then there's a free things to do too.
Yeah, and you can put that in your search, right? Free things to do near me. And so start with that and start to incorporate some travel, even on a local basis. Be a tourist in your own hometown or your own, state, and have fun. So, but that all takes planning. Like I said, the planning part, and then sitting down and talking about it, and then maybe even implementing some milestones. So let's say, the long-term vision we're looking at is in 10 years because we're in our mid-50s now. And so, okay, so what do we want to have done in the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years, and 2 to 5 years, and 5 to 7 years? What are some things we want to have in place to get closer and closer to that vision? Right. So in our planning, we've been talking about, okay, if we're going to move, let's probably do it in the next 2 years, optimally, because then we're still young in our new location, get to have fun, and be on the lake and still be healthy.
We got plenty of time to meet community, make friends, get involved.
Yeah. And so setting those milestones in place are important. And so, because otherwise, what happens?
Oh my gosh, time just goes by so quickly, and you're like, oh my gosh, what did we get done?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, nothing.
Yeah, otherwise life just goes on and we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Well, I think it's so easy to just get stuck in that place of life
Hmm.
and you're not living out your purpose and what you love and what's important to you.
Yeah. And so one of the things to number one, as you set the vision, plan, set some milestones, then it's those regular meetings. How do you keep pace? How do we make sure we're continually moving forward? Because you don't want to get into a situation like all of a sudden, oh, retirement's next year, and then, oh, we got to move now, or
We've seen
whatever.
that happen to our friends. I mean, like they were going to like travel the whole world when the last one retired. Well, then the spouse got just severely ill and there's no way they can travel now at all. And they saved up all this money. And then his health got even worse. And then they decided kind of at the last minute, oh my gosh, we need to move. We need to move into a senior living home so she could have more care for him. But it was a pretty quick thing
Hmm.
because they were not planning on ever moving from their house.
Hmm.
But then it just didn't work out. It was 3 stories and there was no way they could do the stairs anymore and get care for him.
Yeah. And so that's where, again, the vision planning milestones is fine, but you've got to, one things is you got to basically set up some regular meetings with each other to talk about those things, keeping communication, keep talking about those things, and asking each other, how are we doing with moving forward with our plans, right? So we have our, as everybody knows, if you've been listening to us long enough, we have our weekly meetings, which is
Mhm.
coming up here in about 2 hours because it's currently Monday. At 3:30 on Mondays, we have our weekly meetings, and then we have our quarterly, not get-togethers, our quarterly like weekenders that we get away a little bit and talk, more long-term vision stuff, and then of course our yearly meetings and things like that. And so, those regular check-ins allows us to stay kind of, keeping the momentum moving, right?
Right, I think and it also helps us with we can look at things and say, like, what's working, what is working, what is not working.
Mm-hmm.
Like, "Oh my gosh, I'm feeling a little frustrated," or "I'm feeling scared," or whatever it is. We can talk each other through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Like,
one's not stuck, one's not pulling the other or dragging them along. We're able to check in and see how we're doing.
yeah, like when we were having challenges with selling one of our properties, and we took it off the listing, and then talked to another agent or a couple other agents, and then there was one that we were kind of interested in and said, okay, should we relist it? Should we move forward and doing this again? Right. And after the frustration of the previous one, there was some doubt and fear and whatever's coming up.
Well, we had to both process it, and I think we did differently, and we had to make sure we're both on the same page. We didn't wanna do it unless we both had peace about it, relisting it, so and
Hmm.
sometimes that takes a little time to do that, work through all that.
Yeah. So we talked quite a bit, and then we're able to just come to peace about it and move forward.
Yeah, and I think it was good too, we also had some time that passed by when we relisted it.
Hmm. So that's kind of a little bit of an example of the benefit of those regular meetings is keep talking about those things, because otherwise, we don't want to get stuck. It's not like the property would be stuck with this property. I mean, it's
No.
totally paid off and rent's coming in, but was it really holding on the property was not really part of the long term. And so there would have been no harm in keeping it longer or not putting it up for sale again. But also we wanted to make sure, when we do relist it, it was the right move. It wasn't out of desperation. Or we just wanted to unload it to fulfill our long-term vision. That wasn't the case. We wanted to make sure we're going to do it for the right reason.
Yeah, we wanted to make good, healthy choices, and wanted to make sure we had the right realtor and fresh eyes so we could come up with another plan.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of came into that what's working, what's not too. With the previous experience, there was some things that were out of control, but there's things I think in control. And so as we talked through things with the new agent, we kind of looked at that, what was working, what didn't work last time that maybe do different this time. And those are things, because otherwise, if we're going to have an agent that had the similar plan, then we probably wouldn't have done anything.
Right. Well, and I think too, talking about it so that we don't feel frustrated or stuck because it didn't sell the first time. We're like, oh, I'm so frustrated. I don't want to go through this again. It's like, that's why I'm glad we took a little pause, We talked about it, and I think the timing was good. So,
Mm-hmm. And in that conversation about what's working, what's not, it's just overall in life, just evaluating as like every year passes, kind of you look back as you're mentioning. And so is there anything we would do differently?
Mm.
And I know for me personally, I was looking at it just from my own personal point of view, was one of the things that wasn't working was my external relationships outside of you, my relationship with you. You know, we're doing well, but some of my other relationships were failing. And not that we had bad relationships, it was just that wasn't staying connected with people that I wanted to. And, you know, there was a recent experience, actually just through text. Some of my high school buddies, it was kind of a sad situation that came up because one of our buddies' mom passed away. And it's someone that we would always call Ma. In fact, we call his parents Ma and Pa because they were like our second parents growing up. So we spent a lot of time there after school at his house. And so we got to know, obviously, we're very close with his parents. His dad had passed away several years ago from cancer. And then his mom recently just passed away. And then so him and his brother and also his middle brother passed away last year as well, right before his mom passed away. That was a whole thing last year. And so him and his other surviving brother had to go through the process of cleaning out the house to sell it. And then so he texted us, all us guys that grew up together, and said, "Hey, I want to do one last little quote unquote party at the house." And of course, everybody, was all for it. And then there was a whole lot of banter going on back and forth on the text.
of course,
as you would
because
know,
how
honey.
guys
As you
are,
know, honey, a lot of banter goes back and
especially
forth
from high school. and-
because we're talking about all the past stuff that happened, all the funny incidents and all that stuff, and it's just going back and forth on text.
and your phone was just blowing up.
Oh yeah, I had to turn the notifications off because otherwise that thing would be driving me nuts. But it was hilarious. I mean, just you read it and you're just cracking up and you're just smiling and you're just having fun and you're just like, oh, and I was like, oh, I miss this. It's just so fun.
And I could always tell it was them because the text would be bing, 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 bing. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, there they go again, honey.
And
You're
so
like,
that
"Yeah, I
was,
know."
so I remember that little experience there. I was like, oh, you know what? I need to really stay connected closer to some of my friends that I want to stay closer to because, yeah, having a great marriage and relationship with you, honey, is awesome. But as you know, we need our guy friends and our girlfriends.
Oh, I
So-
definitely need my girlfriends. Yeah.
Yeah, so we need that outside thing too because it's a different perspective and we have different kinds of levels of fun with them. And, one thing I can do with them that I can't do
Oh,
with you,
yeah.
honey-
And I'm so glad you do it with them.
What's that, honey?
I know what you're going to say.
What?
Sarcasm. Hey, have at it.
Yeah. So it took me a few years of marriage to figure out I should save the sarcasm for my buddies, and it doesn't go well with my wife. So, anyways, yeah. So that's the other reason. That's the other purpose for my buddies, right? This is sarcasm. I can totally let loose. So, anyways, that's about it. That's kind of, I think, the short of it. I think a little bit, honey, about how your marriage, if you treat your marriage like a business and in principle, that things can get so much better. You'll always be improving, but also you're going to have just a great life with each other, right?
Yeah. And then when you say improving, that makes me think too, like you're growing in the same direction because it could be a class you're taking, a book you're reading, it could be a coach, just things you're working on to improve in general.
Yeah. And you're noticing, it's not all business like. I mean, that's just the process. But within the process is the fun, right? We talk about trips and giving back, volunteer work, having fun, getting to know your own neighborhood kind of thing. All the things that, otherwise what happens on a day-to-day basis in marriage a lot is just errands,
Yeah.
right? It's just
Same old.
It's just chores and doing things.
Uh-huh.
And so the reality is when we start being intentional about planning things, including fun.
And I like doing the vision.
Yeah.
That kind of like keeps me going and on track because sometimes you're like, oh, the mundane of doing the same old. But then you're like, honey, here's the vision. And then I'm like, oh, that's right. That's where I want to go.
Yeah. And also just talking about the future.
I know,
It's fun,
dreaming. Oh my
right?
gosh.
Because some of those things change a little bit. Like where do you want to go on vacation? Like things to do.
And that can change. That's totally normal. There's nothing wrong with that. You just need to just keep talking about it.
Yeah. And so hopefully this makes sense. It's not sterile. It's not oh my gosh, don't be so business-like and we're going to have fun. I mean, the reality is with what we're doing, making our marriage a little bit more business-like, I think we're having more fun.
Right. And I think too, by looking over at the matrix of what's working and what's not, then you can implement that. Like, oh yeah, sometimes when I look back, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that really did work. I really liked that when you asked me, honey, how can I serve you during the day? I'm like, oh, yeah, I think we could implement that.
Yeah, because we've added little things to our weekly meetings and even just through our discussion to make things more loving, more connected and all that. So we're talking about what's working, what's not, and looking for ways to improve, just even our own process, always looking for ways to improve that to make it more efficient. Also make sure we're having more fun too.
Yeah, and we're connected, the heart.
Yeah. So how was that, honey?
That was great.
All right, good. Because I know you had some doubts at the beginning of this conversation before we started to hit record.
Yes, I did.
It was like,
I'm like, where's the color? Where's the creativity?
Yeah, we have to have a whole discussion. We have to have a whole conflict resolution before we got on the podcast.
It's not that bad.
No,
but...
it wasn't. But I was like, she's like, that doesn't sound like fun. It sounds so business-like. And I'm like,
So welcome to our life, you guys.
Yes, exactly. So this conversation has been well tested between the two of us. So how was that, honey, for you?
It was great.
Good? You liked it? Okay. And hopefully it was helpful for you as well. And since you're still listening, please share this with another entrepreneur couple that you know that could use to have a little bit more color in their life, right?
Yes.
And not just win in business, but also win in marriage. And the same principles and concepts that can help you win in business can also help you win in your marriage. You just got to implement it, right? Be intentional and implement it.
And I just want to give a big heartfelt thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you guys so much. You have no idea.
Yeah. Thank you so much for helping us grow and spreading the word and just listening on a regular basis. And so until next week, God bless. Thank you for listening to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. If you found this episode to be valuable, please leave a rating and share it with an entrepreneur couple you know.
Yes, and remember to hit the subscribe button so that you'll get all of our latest episodes, and visit our website, Power Couples by Design, to access a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business, like our weekly videos and on-demand webinars. And don't forget to download our free 8-step guide that you can find on our homepage to help your marriage and business thrive.
We're here to help you build a thriving marriage and a prosperous business. God bless your marriage and business. See you next week.